Okay, now that we've kind of got an idea. Oh, you silly Billy. Hold on. There we go. Now that we kind of got an idea what a job analysis is, let us go back and kind of talk about what good are they. We've already seen the little image figure way up towards the beginning of that last presentation. But remember some of the products of a job analysis, a job description, a written statement of what the job holder should do. Okay? Specifying task requirements. And here's an interesting example of a job description. This is in fact the job description which was posted when I did in fact, get the position I'm in. School of Arts and Science, yeah, we've changed that. It's no longer Arts and Science. It seeks 2 professors at the assistant or associate level to teach undergraduate experimental course, cognitive, biological, neuroscience, general psych, and applied courses, drugs, abnormal, counseling. And so clearly it goes through and it describes which tasks, etc. And clearly when I applied for the job, I use this job description as the way in which I presented myself. I presented materials in such a way to fit this job description. Okay, so job description. Job specifications are the knowledge, skills, aptitudes, and others that seem necessary. Okay, and a job evaluation, which we'll talk about, which is how much is a job worth. Okay, let's evaluate how much we should pay them. Okay? So job analyses are crucial. We need them, number one, because they're an organizational structure for everything we're doing, but also from a more practical perspective, they help defend companies from getting sued. Okay, because if you don't have an accurate job analysis and somebody gets fired, then they can come back and say you have no justifiable grounds for firing me. Okay, so somewhat more descriptive uses here. The job classification, the categorized jobs and the job families. The job analysis allows for this because you cannot have a different set of rules for each and every job. You must have a categories of jobs and therefore a set of rules that applies to that whole category. So assembly line workers, doesn't matter if you're on the front end of the assembly line or the back end, it's clumped together by salary, by benefits, and etc. Okay. Clearly, performance appraisal must use job analysis. In order to identify an effective worker, you really need to have an analysis of what the job is. Okay. For selection and placement, clearly you want to put the right people in the right jobs, but you have to know what the jobs are. Job redesign in particular. A critical look at a job analysis might find points where the job in reality doesn't match what the analysis might say, and clearly training so that you know what you need to train people on. So as an interesting example here, there's just three basic cases about why a job analysis might be important. So in this first one, look at this. Many fewer minority promotions than Caucasian promotions. They said that this promotion was not job related. It wasn't because of important skills. The court looks at the company's job analysis and said, you know what, you did not in fact do a good job analysis. The test items that you're using to measure performance was not a valid reason for justifying promotion. Okay, they lost because they had a bad job analysis. Harless and Duck, physical test, push-ups, etc. for patrol officers, and so there were fewer women being hired than men. So they sued. The court goes back to the job analysis and said, no, there is enough in the job analysis that shows that you must have physical strength to perform the job, therefore justifying such a thing, and it works. And then in the last one, sergeant promotional test, and again, it was the same thing. They found when you go through the job analysis, even though it may have had a discriminatory effect at the end, that the job analysis did reveal that the selection and promotion standards were reflective of what the job requires. Something like that. So if you have a bad job analysis and somebody sues you, you can't defend yourself. So as we said, a job analysis is used to figure out the value in order to set salaries. This is pretty important, and we'll talk about this later. But if you don't do a job evaluation properly, you're going to have a huge problem when workers say no fair. If one student, that's another conversation. If one worker yells no fair, then all of a sudden all kinds of negative things happen. We'll talk about that in the stress and worker well-being chapter. But the viewing feelings of unfairness lead to hugely negative consequences. So you need to have a good job evaluation. And often what happens is there are going to be a point system or compensable factors. And so what's going to happen is you're going to lay it down and you're going to look at, say, for example, compensable factors might include effort. How much effort is physically required? Okay? And so what we find is those jobs that require more physical hours or more physical labor get, generally speaking, compensated better. Skill, yeah, this is an interesting compensable factor. Skill, how much skill is required, which is really kind of also how much education is required, right? And so we know as a fact that generally there's a rule that says the more education that is required to get a job, the higher compensation that job tends to receive, right? And it's really in this particular second line is all about, can we replace this worker? How easily replaced are they? Okay. How much responsibility do they have in their position? And then what are the working conditions? Okay. And so, as we say here, jobs that require a lot of effort or require huge education in order to achieve them, or the employee has a lot of responsibility or something, or they're required to work outside in sub-zero temperatures. These are things that might require, compensation. Really, though, this compensation thing is, as I already sort of said, how easy would it be to replace this worker with another worker, right? And workers that are not easily replaced command higher premiums than those that are easily replaced. And so these compensable factors are turned into points by, again, subject matter experts, always against subject matter experts. And so what will happen is then you can take this job evaluation, figure out how many points each job has, and then figure out how much salary each position has, and you might create a graph such as this. You might find, take a look here, this line that runs straight diagonal up the center, that might be a perfect wage equity. You've got a situation where, look at this, the number of job evaluation points along the bottom, as it gets higher, then the average hourly rate increases. Now, remember we had talked about regression in the last topic. Here's a regression line. And so perfect equity would be that line up the center. But sometimes what happens is, even though we could look at these compensable factors and find what is fair and equitable, it doesn't always work that way. You can have an overpaid workers in situation, and again, it's all about how easy is it to replace this worker. And often compensable factors do a good job in understanding how easy it is to replace. It's not easy to replace somebody that you need a PhD to take the job. I mean, that's just a compensable factor. But what happens if, there's just not enough labor available, not enough people that have those skills? And, we're finding that in some ways that there are many technical skills nowadays. I mean, our high schools are kind of focusing so much on college preparation. You go be a plumber and you'll get if you do a job evaluation on a plumber, you'll find the compensable factors do not justify the wages they receive. They are paid highly. They are in the overpaid category relative to compensable factors. And that is simply because there's just not enough of them out there. Okay? And then at the same time, people can be underpaid in this way. And I'm sorry, that is what the field of faculty member is that there are more and more PhDs out there, but there are fewer and fewer universities hiring PhDs. And so all of a sudden, these universities, again, it's all about how easy is it to replace this person. And it used to be a situation where it was very, very, very difficult to replace a faculty member, but nowadays there are perhaps more people with PhDs than there are faculty positions. So basically, this overpaid and underpaid is just a version of the law of supply and demand from your economics class. So when talking about job evaluation, we need to talk about comparable worth. So the Equal Pay Act, 1963, says men and women who do equal work must receive equal pay. Okay? But really the question was, does equal mean the same jobs? Does equal mean the same positions? Right? We already kind of said that in that job analysis, saying each and every position is in fact unique. You could have 10 people with the exact same job title, okay? And so it becomes really, really hard to figure out what this means. As of 2014, the latest numbers I was able to come across, 21% difference between men's and women's wages. Um, if you go to 1 year after graduation wages, it's down to 18. So it's moving in the right direction, but it's most certainly not got where it's supposed to be. Okay, we find the doctrine of comparable worth, jobs of equal worth to the organization should be compensated equally. And this is kind of like if I, the worker, produce $50 worth of work for my company per hour, and another worker in a different job also produces $50 worth of work for the company, we should have the same salary. Okay, that's kind of the idea. Equal worth is sort of like how many dollars of revenue do I generate, and how many dollars do they generate, etc. It's interesting. We find that, and we're going to talk more about this later, female typed jobs tend to be paid less than male typed jobs. And again, we'll talk about this in great detail. But the fact is, women do in fact bring different skills to an organization than men do. And the skills that women bring often aren't considered compensable factors, all right? And it's a shame, but we will absolutely talk about these, I believe, in topic 4. And yeah, women are far more likely to, say, for example, help a coworker to get through a problem. Okay? But helping a coworker get through a problem is usually not a compensable factor. Now, it's incredibly valuable to the organization. Don't get me wrong. That is, helping out a coworker who's stumbling is hugely important. But it tends not to fall into the compensable factors when doing a job evaluation. And so we find that as a rule, we as a society have simply given more value to those characteristics that men tend to bring with them. Okay, so women tend to have more human interaction skills, perhaps, and therefore you're more likely to find female medical doctors who are going to perhaps be pediatricians more often. Male medical doctors are more likely to be specialists of some kind. Well, specialists tend to get paid more than pediatricians, and it's just what society has done. So, no matter how we look at this, comparable worth, or where was I? Comparable worth, we really need to take a critical look at this doctrine because pediatricians give just as much, if not more, value to our society than a neurology specialist. So, anyway, as I said, we'll talk more about some of these skills that men and women bring to the job in topic 4.